Recently, the United States Supreme Court had heard oral arguments about the issue of marriage and the constitutionality of defining marriage as one man and one woman. Over the last several days, many commentators have looked at the arguments in the court from different perspectives. From the legal political perspective, for example, who should really decide this issue, the democratic process or the court? People have looked at it from the practical perspective of things such as, will ministers be forced to perform same-sex wedding ceremonies if same-sex marriage is made a constitutional right? Will Christian colleges with married student housing lose their tax-exempt status if they deny housing to same-sex couples? And people have even looked at it really from the philosophical standpoint of, well, what are the implications of this going forward as to where we draw the lines about what marriage will be? And all of those things are great, but I want to take a moment over the next several videos to look at this issue really from a worldview perspective, a Christian worldview perspective. Now, let me just state that as we look at this issue, here's where I come from. First, I believe that in the beginning is God, and that's, of course, how the Bible begins. But by that, I mean that God is beyond time and space, and I mean by that God is distinct and separate from His creation. Logically, therefore, all of reality, all of creation has to be understood in terms of its Creator. To find its meaning, its purpose, its value, we have to look back to its Creator. Unfortunately, what we saw in the courtroom is the possibility of having this religious sort of discussion was cut off. And in fact, in the first part of the argument, Justice Breyer says to the state, I want you to give me an explanation for why marriage should be a man and a woman. And he says that you could say that, well, it's just the tradition for the 2,000 years. And he said, or you could say certain religious groups believe it's a sin. And I believe they sincerely think it. There's no question about their sincerity. But is a purely religious reason on the part of some people sufficient? Interestingly, the state's attorney says, well, I am not making those two arguments. And the court responds, Justice Breyer, good. In other words, the court is saying we are going to exclude from the possibility of discussion any religious issues. We're going to operate in this courtroom as if we're practical atheists. And that has consequences, and it shows up throughout the whole rest of the discussion. And we'll take a look at that in the next video.